Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Let's learn computer science.
Hello everyone, I'm back with day 7 video on 21 days Python Masterclass. And our today's topic is iterative statements. And these are commonly known as looping statements as well. So let's start our today's session. Today we'll be covering what is iterative flow control, various types of loops in Python including for and while, range function, how it is used in loops, flowcharts for and while, break and continue statements, how they are used in loops, and what are nested loops. So without wasting time, let's start our today's session. First of all, we'll be understanding what is iterative flow control. So to understand this, let's have a look at our day-to-day life. There are many things that we do on a repeat mode. In our daily routine, we get up, we get ready, we go to work, we come back, we sleep, next day morning again we get up, and the cycle continues. So in programming languages also, there are situations where there are things which are repeated multiple times. So iterative flow control helps in controlling the execution of a sequence of instructions or code by repeating it multiple times. It's a way to automate repetitive tasks, solve complex problems more efficiently, and handle scenarios where the same set of actions needs to be performed multiple times. For example, in real life, like a coffee machine brews cup after cup, computer also, they repeat tasks. To understand iterative flow control, first of all, we need to understand what are looping statements and their types. There are two types of loops. One, count controlled, and the other one is condition controlled. So sometimes we already know that how many times we have to do something. How many times a particular task is to be repeated, we already know the count. So those loops are known as count controlled loops, where you know already number of repetitions. However, we also have situations where we do not know exactly how many times something is to be repeated, but we do know the conditions. So we repeat something until or unless a condition is true or false. So that is known as condition controlled loops. So loops are of two types, count controlled and condition controlled. In Python, we have for loop used in scenarios where you already know number of repetitions, and while is used where there is some condition. Okay, so let's understand these in more detail. First of all, let's understand for loop. What is for loop? How it is used in Python? So as we have already covered, for loop is used in the situations where you know the exact number of repetitions. For example, a printer producing multiple copies of a document. You give a command mentioning how many exact number of copies are required. Also, creating a countdown timer, right? You know how many minutes or seconds timer you need to set. So exact number of repetitions are known beforehand. In Python, this is the syntax for using for loop: for, variable, in, iterable, and then a colon. We'll understand this with the help of an example. Before that, let's have a look at the flowchart for loop. So here, You enter the for loop, you check, have you reached the last item? If you have reached the last item or the last count, then you will exit the loop. If not, then there are some statements written which will be repeated, and then you again go back up to check whether the count has reached or not. And this process continues till the time you reach the last item, and then you exit from the loop, right? To understand this, let's have a look at range function. Range function plays a very, very important role in for loop. Range function is an inbuilt function which is used to generate a sequence of numbers and returns an immutable sequence type called a range object. Syntax of range function is range, all in small letters, parenthesis, then start value, stop value, and step. Let's understand what all these three arguments are used for. First of all, start. Start, this argument gives the starting value of the sequence. This is an optional argument. If you do not include a value, by default, the value of start is 0. Then we have stop. This is the ending value of the sequence. And whatever value you write here, that's not inclusive, that's exclusive. And the range will generate numbers up to, but not including this value, right? So if you write 0 to 7, so then it will go for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, but not for 7. Right? So number of iterations are decided by this value. It tells where to stop, but that value is not included. And then step is the increment or the decrement value in the sequence. If you do not include it, by default, this value is 1. So here, start and step, these are optional values. You can include them, you can leave them. However, you have to add a value for stop. This argument is mandatory. You need to put a value here to tell what is the range. Now, before we move further, let's understand for loop with the help of some examples. Let's write a for statement. I'm writing for, let's say I is my variable or counter variable. For I in range function I'm using here, in range, let's say 9 I'm writing here. Then a colon. So here when I'm writing range 9, that means I'm putting just the stop value. I'm not writing start and step. So start will be taken as 0 by default and step will be taken as 1 by default. So 9 is my stop value. Now inside it, I'm just simply writing print I. So I is my counter variable. So let's see what's the output. Yeah. So here is the output. Now let's understand how this output has come. So for that, I'll take I here. I'll take step value here so that, you know, step is 1. As I told you, start value is 0. So we started with 0 by default because start value is 0. So I's value in first iteration is 0. Now, as I's value is 0, it is not reached till 9. So it will enter the loop. So because inside the loop only there is one statement which is print I. So it will print value of I and it will increment one's value with the step. So step is 1. So it will increment I's value with 1. So I now is 1. Now it will check whether this has reached 9 or not. If not, again, it will enter the loop. Now it is 1. So it will be printed. Again, it will be incremented. It will become 2. It will check again when it goes up. It will check whether it has reached to the maximum value. No, then it will again enter the loop and print I, which is 2. And so on till the time it becomes 8. So it prints 8, right? After that, when it goes up there, so after 8, it will become 9 after incrementing it with the step 1. When it checks here, because it has reached the maximum value, so it will not enter the loop, rather it will come out of the loop. So that's how 9 is not included. Okay, so I hope you have understood. Let's take one more example. For I in range 1, 5, 1, colon, print I, enter. So look at the output. It has given 1, 2, 3, 4. Why? Because start value is 1 now, going till 5, but not including it. So we have printed till 4. Step is 1. So that is why 1 is being incremented every time. Let's look at one more example for I in range, let's say 6, comma 10, comma increment value is 2, right? And then colon, then I'm printing I, enter, enter. That's the output, right? So because start value is 6, so it has started from 6, but as step value is 2, so it incremented it by 2, so 8. But next time after 8, when it incremented it, it became 10. So 10 is not printed because 10 value is not included, right? So that is how it prints. Now let's have a look at one more example for I in range. You can take any variable. I'm just taking I. However, you can take any valid variable name. Range, let's say 10, 5, -1, colon, print I. So that's my output. Now I have started with higher value, right? My stop value is 5. Because I'm going from larger value to smaller value, so I have given step as -1, decrementing, right? So started with 10, then decremented it with 1, 9, then decrementing 1, 8, then 7, then 6. However, 5 is not included. We go up to 5 without including it. So that's how for loop works. Now for loop can also be used along with lists. So lists, because you have not understood as of now, but I'll still give one example. So list, let's say we have a list as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say this is my list, right? Now I'll use for loop for, let's say, I in list 1, colon, print I. So I have taken numbers in a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I used a counter variable and then I written list name here, so it iterated with each element which is there in the list. So let's take list 2 equals to with some string values, let's say. So CS, comma, with SKS. And let's say take some variables also. Sorry, some numbers also. So that's my list. Now I'm printing with for loop for I in list 2. I missed writing I. So for I in list 2, then colon, then I'm using print. I'm just writing print, but you can write as many statements, whatever statements you want to write as per your problem situation. So output is CS, first element, right? Then with second element, then SK as third element, and 45 and 67 as those elements. So you can iterate a for loop using any iterable object, right? So that's all about our for loop. Okay, so let's talk about while loop now. So while loop, as I said, is a condition controlled loop, right? So while loop repeatedly executes a block of code while a specified condition remains true. So you have a condition, you write it, and then all the statements which are written inside, those will be executed as long as your condition is true, right? And condition, the loop continues until the condition becomes false. In real life, if you look at the example, so similar to patiently waiting in a line, the loop keeps running until your turn comes or the condition changes, right? So you're standing in the queue until unless your turn has come, right? Let's have a look at the syntax, which we'll understand with the help of some examples as well. So here, while is the keyword, and you write a condition here using operators. Which operators? Relational operators, right? To understand relational operators, you can go back and check my video of day 5. So you go back and check, revisit your concepts about operators so that you confidently use those operators in while loop, right? So after condition, you put a colon, which is very, very important. As I said, in Python, indentation is very important and colon helps in generating that indentation automatically. So after the indentation, all the statements which are part of while will be intended towards right hand side. And once you come out of the loop, those statements will not be included in the while loop, right? Now let's have a look at the flowchart for while loop. So here, anywhere in the program, you enter the while loop, there is a condition, you put the condition looking at, let's say, is A equals to B? Maybe that's the condition, right? So while A is equals to B, or while A is not equals to B, while A is less than 10, any condition, right? You can also use logical operators here to combine two statements together, right? So when a condition is true, you enter the loop, you run the statements, and then you go up again, you check the condition. If condition is true, you again enter, run the statements, and then again go start of the loop, again check condition. Once the condition is false, you come out of the loop. Now here in while loop, you need to understand that whatever your variables you are using in the condition, they need to have some initial value. So they need to be initialized with some value before you put that condition, right? So if you're writing while A is less than 10, so A should have a value initialized to it before you enter the loop. So maybe A is equals to 1, A is equals to 0, A is equals to anything, right? So one initialization value, one initial value is to be put into A before you put your condition. Also, inside the loop statements, you need to change that value, that variable that you have used in the condition, value of that variable, you must change inside the loop. Otherwise, if you do not change and that value remains constant always, then your loop will become an infinite loop. It will run forever. It will never stop because condition will remain true always, right? So that is very, very important in while loop. Now let's have look at some examples. So let's go to Python shell. Let's take a variable, let's say counter is equals to 0. Then I'm putting while. Now there is a condition while counter is less than 10 colon print counter, and I have to change the value. Counter is equals to counter plus 1. Now, as I said, that whatever conditional, whatever variable you're using in the condition, that needs to be initialized. So I have initialized counter to 0. Then there is a condition that while counter is less than 10, print counter's value. And as I said, we have to change that value that we are using in the condition. So I'm changing it by writing counter is equals to counter plus 1. So every time it will be incremented by 1, so that my loop does not become infinite, right? Now I'm just coming out of the loop. I am running this. But before that, I have to save it. So I am saving while test program. So save it, and I have got the output. So output is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Till 9. Now let's understand how it is, how we got this output. So first time counter's value is 0. So I entered here, I checked, is 0 less than 10? Yes. So I reached here, I entered the loop, I reached here, print counter. So value of counter is printed. Now next statement, counter's value is changed by 1. So I again went up there, I checked this condition. Now is 1 less than 10? Yes. So again reached here, 1 is printed here, then 1's value is changed to 2, then again went up there. Why 2 is less than 10? Yes, it is. So I printed 2. So this will continue till the time we get 9. So as soon as we reach 9, so it will print 9, then it will increment it. It will become 10. It goes up there. It checks, is 10 less than 10? No, condition becomes false. So it will not do anything. It will come out of the loop. Right now, we do not have any value, any statement outside the loop. So our program ends here. So that's how while loop works. Now let's understand break and continue statements. These are also two very important statements in Python or in many programming languages. So break statement, it allows you to exit a loop prematurely based on a certain condition and helps optimize loops by stopping unnecessary iterations. So whenever there is a situation where you check on a condition, and if that condition is true and you just want to stop rest of the iteration and you just want to come out of that loop immediately, in that scenario we use break statement, right? For example, you are running some loop and you want to stop as soon as you reach a certain value. Let's say a, you're putting a condition on a that when a is 5, you stop everything and you just come out of the loop. So there you will put a break statement. Continue statement, it skips the current iteration and moves to the next one and streamlines code by skipping unwanted actions. So inside a particular iteration, you want to skip rest of the statements and you want to go to the start of the loop again. You're continuing with the next iteration. In that scenario, we use continue statement. Now let's understand these statements with the help of flowcharts. So you enter the loop, you check for the condition, and you put a condition. Do you want to break? I mean, some condition to break, and there you will use break statement, and you will just exit the loop. If you don't want to break, then you execute rest of the loop, and then you again go back to the test condition. In continue, what do? You check the condition for the loop, and then if you want to continue, you will just directly go to the condition of the loop. Otherwise, you just run rest of the statements and then again go back to the condition of the loop, right? As long as your condition is true, your statements will be executed. You'll only leave the loop once this condition becomes false. However, in case of break, you can come out of the loop whenever your condition for break is true, right? So that is how break and continue statements work. Let's look at them in Python shell to understand them in a better way. So let's use break and continue in the same statement, in the same program that we have just created. So here, let's put a condition. Once counter becomes 5, you come out of the loop, right? So if counter is equals to 5, you write here break, right? Let's just run this. Now here, look at the output. So counter is 0. So it checked 0 less than 10. Yes. So print counter, it printed it. Now it checked this condition. If counter is equals to 5, no, this is not true. So it didn't enter if, and it reached here. So it incremented counter to, so it incremented counter's value by 1, right? And again, check the condition. So now it became 1. Is 1 less than 10? True. So it printed 1. Now checked condition, not true, so didn't enter. Now reached here, incremented 2. Similarly, when it reached 5, so when counter becomes 5, so 5 less than 10, yes, entered, it printed 5. Now it checked this condition, is counter equals to 5? Yes, true. So it entered the loop and it came out of the loop immediately. It did not increment, it did not go up there, it just came out of the loop immediately where break statement is written, right? So that is how break works. Now let's have a look at how continue works. So here I have written for I in range 5, and then I have put a condition if I is equals to 3, then continue, and then I have written print statement. Let's see what's the output of this. So here output is 0, 1, 2, 4. It skipped 3. Why? Because as soon as i's value became 3, it did not go to the next statement. Rather, it went up there to check the condition in for loop, whether it has reached to the last item or not. So it skipped all the statements written after continue. It started with the next iteration of for loop. So that is how continue statement works. Now let's have a look at nested loops. We have already learned about nested if statements, right? Conditional statements. So for that, if you want to revisit, you can look at my day 6 video of flow control using if statements in Python. So let's understand how nested loops can be created in Python. So when you place one loop inside of another loop, forming a hierarchy, it is known as nested loops. The inner loop, it completes all its iteration for each iteration of the outer loop, right? And this is the nested loops concept is used in pattern printing, matrix manipulation, etc. So we will understand this with the help of an example. So here I have written one example to print this pattern, right? So here, if you look at outer loop is used for basically for rows, and inner loop is used for columns. So this loop, basically it is used for number of rows. So here in this pattern, if you look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 rows are there. So outer loop is used for rows and inner loop is used for columns. So if you look at here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns. However, these 5 columns, their value is based on value of the row. So here, first row, it has only number of columns equal to the value of I, right? So if I is 1, then only one column is printed. In second, if this value is 2, then 2 columns are being printed. Then 3 columns, because 3 rows. So number of columns in each iteration, the value is dependent on value of I, right? And then we are just printing here star and end. Now to understand this format of print statement, if you want to revisit, if you want to revise your concepts, you can just go and look at my day 4 video where I have explained it in detail, that what is end argument in a print statement, what is sep argument in a print statement. So do look over there, do revisit those concepts by looking at my video of day 4. So here I'm just printing star, and my end value I am keeping it as a space. By default, end is always new line character, right? But here I am keeping it as a space. And after coming out of this loop, inner loop, I am just printing a new line character, because by default, this end value is a new line character. So this empty print statement will just simply print a new line. It will insert a new line, right? So that is how nested loops they work, right? Now, this is assessment time now. There are 5 questions for you. Have a look, pause the video, try solving these questions, and I'll display answer key in the end. Do compare your answers then. So please solve these. All the best. But this is the answer key. Please compare your answers. Hope you got all the right answers. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video.